Hey everyone, I'm Madals, and today I'm going to show you how to change your stream from looking like this to this for only about $40, and even more importantly, sounding like this to sounding like this for absolutely nothing. Stay tuned and I'll run you through how it all works. Now, as we get into this, let me just cover off what the system is I'm using, so you know I'm not doing any fancy trickery. It's a one PC setup. I am running a i7-4770K at 4 GHz, a 1080 Ti GPU, a Logitech Brio is what you're looking at me in, and it is exactly the same camera as before, and all of the audio has been recorded through this Rode Podcaster USB mic that just plugs straight into my PC. So, how does this magic happen? Well, it's essentially the biggest one for the lighting and the camera is just one. I eliminated the backlight. I'm not sure if you saw, but I simply closed my curtains. That's not a big ask. It's not a big thing to do either. I'm just making sure that the room I'm in doesn't have too much light behind me because that's going to affect the overall appearance of the camera. Number two, I just added in some very cheap, very simple USB powered ring lights behind my camera. And that was literally 20 bucks. I'll put a link in the description below to show you exactly what I bought. They come with their own tripod, although it's not very good, and it just sits on my desk. It was literally $15. It's brightness adjustable, color adjustable as well, and that's what really brightened me up. And that was it for the hardware changes and kind of changes to my room. Everything else you're going to see here is software based. So speaking of the bit of software that was the biggest change is obviously this overlay I'm using. Now, I did have a very basic overlay before, but this one from Nerd or Die is absolutely beautiful in my opinion. This is my standard streaming setup. Now, I stream in 21:9, which is why I get this kind of unusual format, because even though my monitors are 21:9, I output to 16:9, which is better for most viewers, 1080 60 frames per second. That gives me this kind of bar down here, which I really like because I can fill it up with a little bit of info, the usual stream information without blocking any of the game. And I made this just by kind of fiddling around a little bit with this borderline stream package from Nerd or Die. As you can see, it is a beautiful, beautiful setup. I've got it all here. I mean, it's got some other scenes which I'll quickly show you, like this little Be Right Back screen, for example, and a great stinger transition. It was 20 bucks. And to be honest, for that, you really can't go wrong. That is for all the files, all the stingers, all the cool chat interfaces. It was super easy to set up in StreamLabs or OBS or Stream Elements. So go and check that out as your first piece of kit. Moving on from the overlay, I did do some nice software changes to the camera. But just to prove that I'm not fibbing, let's just switch back to my full screen camera so you can see what it looks like with these adjustments. Now, some of these are very, very small. Others made a much bigger difference, but remember, the only hardware changes I made was I added a $15 ring light into this that's USB powered, and I closed my curtains to cut out some backlight. Real simple. So what were the software changes? To be honest, not very much. So if we go and take a look at my OBS scene, so this is going to get a little funky looking. But basically, as you can see, I've just loaded up my webcam properties. That's all that's loaded here. You can see I've got Brio 4K Stream Edition running, and all you've got to do is click Configure Video. In here, you should end up with a nice little properties panel that looks a bit like this. Now, first of all, what you need to know is that so many of these things are going to be set to auto, and they just make a camera look terrible. So the first one that I found in auto is exposure. Now, the problem with this is it tends to really, really boost that up. And the downside of that is it makes it a lot brighter without the other changes, but it can also make you get a bit blurry when you're moving, and it just doesn't look as good. If you switch that off, it does darken things down a little, but to be honest, I don't really mind because with the lighting I've got in front of me, it keeps me looking clear on camera, and it does darken down the background a bit, but that isn't a big concern for me. The next one is focus. So focus, you'll often find, is turned on auto by standard. For streaming, you're not going to be moving around loads. You're going to be in a pretty fixed position, which means manual focus is absolutely fine. Again, just uncheck that from auto and fiddle around until you look nice and crisp and clear. What you've got to remember, though, is that how far are you going to be moving? Are you going to be getting closer, further? Are you going to be running back and doing like jumping jacks behind the stream? I don't know. But if you're sat still, it can be in a fixed position. The way I got this looking really good is I just wrote down a couple of words on a standard bit of paper, fairly big, and held it next to my face and fiddled with it till it looked as crisp as possible. That's it for this side. The only other one which you might find on I didn't is black low light compensation. If you click that, sometimes that can go absolutely crazy and really wreck your stream and how the camera looks. So make sure that's always off. Next over on the video proc amp. So this is where you need to do a few things. So as the exposure is quite low, if I switch this back down the gain to where it was, as you can see, I get basically pitch black. So just ramp this up until a point where you look pretty good. You can see yourself quite clearly. You can fiddle around towards your personal preferences. Another one you're going to find that is very commonly switched on is backlight comp. Again, switch this off. You don't want that on. And finally, the white balance. That can quite often be set to auto, which can throw things out a little bit. Switch it off and just manually adjust it until it looks nice and good for you. Now, when you're moving on from this point, there's a few other little tips and tricks that I did to make this look really, really good. So in the gamer careers section, they have a whole ton of lookup table or LUTs as filters that you can add to your webcam. So if we go and have a look at the filters I've got on, I've just got the face mask plugin and also sitting there with one LUT that I've got from Gaming Careers. So check them out on YouTube. Again, I'll put a link in the description below just so you know that it's there. And then the final piece, which is something that you may find, is again within the properties of the webcam. You just need to make sure your resolution and frames per second and etc. are all correct. Now, one of the really big ones that I found here that made a phenomenal difference is that wasn't the resolution of FPS, because I had that set to what it should have been already. Make sure you do under custom. But it was the video format. This was on any before. I forced it into MJPEG, and that made the video just look so much clearer and so much better. So that finishes off things here in the video settings. Time to move over to the microphone. All the changes that I made to the microphone were essentially done through this one bit of software called Voice Meter Banana. It is a free bit of software, although it is donation funded. So I did choose to give a little donation to it because it is an amazing tool. And I'm going to just run through how this works. So essentially, this changes how you interact with all of your audio settings on your PC and adds basically a software mixer, which is the same as if you had a traditional studio microphone plugged into a USB mixer. Now, I'm not going to go through how to set this up on the most basic level because there's tons of YouTube guides for that. I'll link you to one in the description that is very helpful for it. But let's just talk about some things I've done. So I've got my microphone here just set up in the second hardware input. The first one I'm using is to split Discord out of my stream into a separate audio source so I can mute that but still hear it myself. And I've got my microphone outputting into the third hardware slot. The first is for my headset, the second is for my external speakers, and this third is just for the microphone. Now, to demonstrate what an effect this has, I'm using two things. The first is a very slight change to the voice FX panel, and the other is to the equalizer on just my microphone. Now, to demonstrate what a big difference that equalizer makes, I'm going to turn it off for a second. Now, this is my voice just without that equalizer running straight through the Rode Podcaster. Hopefully you can hear the difference. Once I switch it back on, it comes quite a bit nicer. The second one is in the voice FX. Now, I did this a lot of fiddling with both, and I found that getting the EQ right first was the most important, and then I just added a little bit of the voice FX into there. But if I just turn these off, you can turn any of these off by double-clicking. Hopefully you can hear the difference in my voice now compared to when I put it back up to here. Now, let's take a look at the EQ because that's pretty much the biggest piece you need to think about. So the EQ, to bring that up, you just come over the hardware output that you will have set up. Make sure it's clicked, so it's blue. That means that it's active, and then right-click on it to bring up the control panel. Now, within this control panel, you've got a whole array of options, but I'm going to give you a really quick and easy way to set this up so it looks quite good. Also, just take a look at these settings. They'll probably work for the vast majority of male streamers to make your voice sound good. But honestly, the fiddling is just something you're going to have to keep recording yourself and editing and listening back and trying to work out what sounds best for you. But as a general rule of thumb, anything below 80 Hertz, reduce it by 12 decibels and put it on this one here, which basically cuts out all of the frequencies on a curve below 80 Hertz. That's kind of background humming that you're not going to want, and it's not part of most male vocal ranges. What I then do is I boost up the 150 hertz range. This Q factor is just how steep that curve is. So I've got a steady curve here, just kind of boosting everything between about 100 and 300 with a focus around the 150. This just gives your bass and your voice a little bit of a boost and makes it sound a little bit nicer to the ear. Then it's basically just a small drop around the kind of 300 mark. I did about 300, 350 in the curve there. That's just about -4. That gets your voice just listening a little bit more crisp. Again, primarily focused for male voices. Female voices will have a little different EQ pattern, so you may have to do a bit of research for that. I'm sorry. Nothing really changes in the middle here. Up on the top end, I give a little boost right up at around the 9000 hertz range. That's just a 4 dB plus, and that just gets that crisp top sounds to sound just a little bit more clear than they otherwise would. And then finally, everything above 1300 hertz, I am cutting off. So this is rather than using the standard kind of pinch, you're just having a fall off towards the higher end relatively steeply. Because to be honest, especially with male voices, you're not going to be going up into that range. So cutting that sound out just gets rid of any of the real top ends that you don't really want in there. You can just hit flat at any point. I'm not going to because it will ruin all of my settings I've done. But you can turn these on and off. So for example, if I turn off that one, hopefully you can hear a slight difference in my voice compared to when I have it turned on. And that really is everything that you need to set up within Voicemeeter in order to get that sounding really good. So because I'm trying to keep this quick, I am going to cut out just a little bit more, which is a touch on this voice effects panel. So if you go too low, it really makes your voice sound weird, which I'll change now as I've got on screen, and it probably sounds quite peculiar compared to just the default. Likewise, brightness, I'll put that way up, and you should be able to hear how that changes compared to neutral. I found for my voice with the EQ active, having it just a little bit kind of around here, just towards that centerpiece, up a bit, left a bit, really just added a little touch to my voice that made it sound nice, but that is again personal preference. Again, just so you can hear really clearly, this is my voice with these settings on, and this is my voice with those settings just set back to nothing, so the raw feed out of my microphone. So last but certainly not least, we're just going to dive straight back into OBS, or as I'm using StreamLabs OBS, and we're going to do a couple of filters onto our microphone just to really polish it. So what do these filters do and how do you get to them? So down in the bottom right, you just click on the cog under your microphone and click on filters. I'm running two. The first is a VTS2 plugin. I'm using the Reaper ones. I'll put a link in the description below to where you can find those. And they've got a whole host of them, as you can see here, absolutely tons. The only one I'm using is the gate. So let's just take a look at the options for a gate and explain what it does. Now, setting this is super easy. You just move this slider up and down, really to hit the point where these green bars are sitting when you're not talking. And what that does is if the sound level falls below that, it just cuts your mic completely, silence. Now, the reason you want to do this is so background noises like humming, computer fans, air conditioners, heaters, or anything like that don't come through when you're not talking. They will still come through when you're talking. It doesn't eliminate the noise because obviously your voice will trigger the microphone. It still picks it up. But what it does do is it stops it coming through when there's quiet on the stream. So how do you set this? It's quite simple, really. You just go quiet and see where these bars decide to hang around. Which for me is about there. You then move this slider to just above there and you kind of fiddle with it and get it roughly to about a point where it's as high as it can be so that when you're talking quietly, like I am now, I'm still triggering it. And you know it's triggering because you can see it coming through here, but when I get quieter, it instantly cuts out. And that's really how you set up the gate. It's pretty simple. The next and possibly one of the most important bits for any excitable streamers out here is the compressor. Now, the Reaper plugins do have a compressor in there, but I find the OBS built-in one very simple to use, so I just get that going. Now, what a compressor does is it just makes the very highest and most loud sounds on your microphone quieter and makes your quietest ones a bit louder, so that regardless of whether I'm talking quietly like this to you, or if I'm talking very loudly to you like this, I hopefully haven't burst your eardrums. Now, obviously your viewers are going to love you for this. The default settings are pretty good. All you might need to do is adjust the ratio if the distance between your loudest and quietest is huge, or also if your threshold is not triggering it quite right, but I found the defaults worked for me. So that pretty much covers everything that I've done in my camera and on my stream in the last week to really step it up a notch. So how much did it cost me? It was about 40, 50 bucks. I can't remember exactly, but the live was about $15. The overlay pack from Nerd or Die, that was $20. And then Voice Meter is free, but it's donation based, so I gave them a small donation. So let's call it $50. And that really ramps up your stream from looking very basic to looking pretty damn clean, sounding nice and looking good, all with very little investment. Now, results may vary. I can't say that this is going to be as big a gain for everyone else as it has been for me. I was very fortunate that from when I was originally a streamer, I've got back recently, I already had a really nice microphone, I already had a really good camera, etc. If you're trying to make a little headset mic sound as good as this, the changes that I've shown you today, they certainly will help, but they're not going to be a magic bullet. Obviously, if you've got better hardware, it will have a bigger improvement. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't give it a go. Of course, I will answer any questions you've got. Let me know in the comments section below. Thank you very much for watching. Check out the rest of my content, which is mainly gaming stuff rather than tutorials. And also, if you do want to watch me live, I stream as per the schedule right there. And you can catch me on twitch.tv/Madals, which is up there. And you can see all my other socials there too. Hit the subscribe button and the bell if you're watching on YouTube. The support would be much appreciated. And as always, enjoy streaming, have a great time, and hope to see you on my channel soon. Thanks for watching.